Welcome to the Rock is George podcast. I'm your host, George Dionne, and this is episode 133. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, or follow on the platform you're listening to us on. You can also check out my work at theloudest.com on the planet, knac.com, for exclusive interviews, live show coverage, and more. My guests for this episode are Mike Scullion and RHYS Green of the Canadian pop rock act Mystery Romance. I get a lot of music sent to my email address. I try to get through as much as I can. I got something from Mystery Romance, who I had no prior knowledge of. I listened to it. It was a little something different than what I normally get. I normally get a lot of hard rock and metal stuff. Mystery Romance was more of that pop new wave music of the mid to late 80s. You heard it a lot in teenage coming of age movies or romance, rom-coms, stuff like that. Think of Simple Minds or Aha. Doing some research, I discovered that Mystery Romance released an album in 1989 called Human Sexuality. It spawned 3 charting singles for them, 2 in their homeland of Canada and 1 internationally. The band seemed to go MIA after that. In recent times, Mystery Romance's music has been used in television programs, much like a lot of bands that were around 30, 40 years ago. A placement in a TV show can kind of pique people's interest again. It happened for Kate Bush in Stranger Things. It happened for Swedish act Wigwam in Peacemaker. And it's happened for Mystery Romance. They had one of their songs appear in a Will Ferrell, Paul Rudd television show that's on Apple TV called The Shrink Next Door. Mystery Romance released their latest album, Flying Through the Moon, on January 31st through Current Recordings. It's a collection of new material as well as a couple of old favorites. So here's Mike Scullion and RHYS Green of Mystery Romance to tell you more about it. If I knew absolutely nothing about Mystery Romance, how would you describe the band's music to me?
Well, it's pop.
Older pop, I would think.
Older pop, yeah, like, categories change. I don't know if you'd call it adult contemporary or Europop or, categories change all the time. So I don't even know what ours is in now, but rock and pop used to be kind of together back in the day, and now there's just so many micro genres, I guess. So it's a little hard to pigeonhole.
Yeah, I asked my son that, and my daughter that, and where would you find this? And some they go, well, that's rock, or this is closer to pop. So we're somewhere in there.
Listening to it, it kind of reminded me of, kind of 80s new wave pop stuff you heard in movies, and soundtracks, and maybe a little bit of UK influence is what I would say.
That would make sense because 2 primary songwriters are from Ireland. Were born there, lived there till we were 15. So our influences were all UK bands like T-Rex, Slade, and then the newer stuff, George Michael, all that, Elton John, all that. So that's where our influences came from.
So you have a new album out. It came out on January 31st, Flying Through the Moon on Current Records. Before we get to that, I think we need to hit the time machine on the band and go back to the band's very beginnings, because the internet doesn't really tell the story of Mystery Romance. I did discover that you guys formed sometime around 1989. So what kind of brought the band together back then?
I'd been doing myself had been doing a bunch of stuff on my own, trying to find collaborators. And my father knew our drummer's father, and through him ended up meeting RHYS and meeting another guitar player. And we all sort of got together, and we had a couple of songs, just put a demo together. And like put it on bought a 4-track and put 4 songs together and sent it down to Toronto, a bunch of record labels, and Current Records called us and said, yeah, this is great. We didn't know who they were, but they'd already had some Juno Awards in Canada. It went from there, and we started recording in 89, I think. Yeah, 89. Made the first video. I think September. It came out September 89, and in 1990 we played Saddle Dome for 15,000 people. So it did really well on the radio. We were all over the place. and radio. Every chart, we were in the charts, international charts, but they never printed a single, which kind of annoyed us. And we were in the singles charts, number 6.
What'd the video do? Did the video chart?
No, I don't have the video chart, but the single definitely was in the charts. And I would call A&M and say, I go to the record store and there's a slot that says sold out. You didn't print a single because it had so much radio play. And they said, no, it's gonna tank. After it was there 4 weeks, stayed another 6 weeks in the top 10. We lost a bit of income there. And then after that, we got a few gigs playing Saddle Dome, Jack Singer with the Philharmonic. And then just the guys, we're at the end of university, right? So and guys were like, well, I can't just do this for no money anymore. And we just sort of
all got jobs.
Yeah. It was kind of sad. I think it was the wrong timing for us. I think if we'd have come like 2 or 3 years earlier, record companies would have been in better shape and they might have put some more into it.
So you signed with Current Records, who's a division of A&M. Are you just marketed to Canada at the time, or do they try to kind of squeak you into the US, or was
they got us in the UK on President's Records, which we didn't know until recently, because some of the songs from that album ended up in a couple of TV shows, like Apple TV show with Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd. That publisher just called one day and said, hey, we can put this in this Apple show. And we'll go, who are you? We're like, we're the publisher for the UK. So we did find out, it was released in the UK, but we didn't know that at the time.
Even though the record label didn't really believe in your singles and stuff like that, you mentioned you did play some shows, so they must have given you a little bit of tour support back then?
No.
No, actually, we might have even done more shows had they given us tour support at all.
Had they given us tour support, we would have done some shows.
Yeah.
Those came from just so much. The radio guys were really good, and I think A&M were pretty good. Like in those days, everyone had an A&R person in every city. They were really good, and they just kind of embraced us because we were from Calgary, and TV stations would call, and radio guys would call and say, "Do you want to play this concert with some iconic Canadian bands?" Which we did. And then we were getting set for this tour, but it all fell through because there was no tour support. For Reith and I, that is not such a bad thing because we just loved the studio, not the tour. Whereas our guitar guy, he was born to be on stage.
Yeah.
Right?
And that was Stuart McCullough?
No, Stuart McCullough is a songwriter. He's a singer. It was Richard Crooks, guitar player. Great guitar player. Could play anywhere, any place. And he was born to play on stage. He was getting married, so he was like, I got to go to Vancouver and get a real job. So he went to Vancouver. So it kind of fizzled. We kind of stuck together for a couple of years, and it just kind of fizzled. And then it was the rebirth with Jerry Young saying, hey, I heard your music in the movies. You should get back and do some stuff.
Yeah, it started by kind of redoing some of the older songs to kind of make them a little bit more contemporary sounding.
Yeah, we did that. We've done that a few times, and it's hard to get people together, though. These days. Well, at least we can have this technology. We can do it. Then we picked up a singer from New Zealand who kind of auditioned about 8 years ago, and he brought a whole new dynamic to it. And we've never been in the same room recording with him.
Well, that's kind of the music industry today. You do everything remotely.
Yeah, and he sings all his vocals in his car with his sweaters up around, and they sound great. So we just send him the tracks, and he does his vocal thing and sends it back.
This album that you released in 1989, Human Sexuality, somebody came across, you said your UK label was trying to license the music out to music and TVs. Is that how it started to first appear in these programs?
Yes, but that was recent. That's in the last 2 years.
Right.
The 80s revival has been huge in television, right?
Yeah.
So somehow, I mean, they're pretty big. They're a big publisher. If you look them up, they're called Kastner. And they're pretty big in the world. They've done a lot of stuff, been around for 50 years. So we didn't know, they had the rights to it. And they said, we can get this in the show. Would you let us do it? And we're like, well, sure, of course. And we did have one movie before around 1990 called Primo Baby. And one of the songs is in that. And that's gone on to that has made some money royalty wise. But the last couple of years, it's mostly been revival of UK and TV shows. But the industry is getting harder and harder to get opportunities.
Well, the TV seems to be a saving grace for some artists. I mean, nobody heard of Kate Bush running up that hill until it appeared in Stranger Things. And then all of a sudden it's the greatest song in the world. And it came out 35 years ago and nobody blinked at it.
That's
And
right.
it's kind of the 80s thing, too. All the kids like the 80s sound now, too, because it sounds new and different, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. Yeah, my kids too. I think the kids today are better versed, I think, actually, because they like, if they like the song, they don't care whether it was made in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. They don't care. They just like the song.
There's certainly been, an 80s revival and 90s revival within the hard rock and heavy metal music genre, but you guys' genre, I'd say it's starting to make that resurgence, and people are really starting to latch onto that kind of new wave pop from the 80s at this juncture.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, if you look at The Weeknd and guys like that, they're doing stuff that sounds a bit like a-ha and groups like that. If you like the song, it doesn't matter where it came from. I think that's what's changed today.
Your latest album, Flying Through the Moon, was obviously spawned from the renewed interest in your music from appearing in these TV shows.
Yes. Yeah, and we'd had a few people online searching for the old songs, and I would just upload them. Here you go. And yeah, that's where, well, maybe we should get all this back material that we've never finished.
And you've just you've updated the website with all the videos.
Yeah, that's a brand new thing for us, is this year that is putting up a website. And actually, we started to find our record being sold on Discogs and all over the Europe and stuff, like some ridiculous prices, like $75 for an album. So I actually I'll show you one. I actually bought one. Let me grab it right here, because we didn't have one. Right. So I bought one sealed. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
Right
wow.
There. Right. So found it online, and I think this one cost me $25. It was selling for $7 when it came out. But we never had any. We didn't even get any copies.
Really?
No, never got any copies. No, they did do good promo.
CDs, yeah.
Give us CDs, but they did do good promo. I mean, you'd go into a Rexam, the Record Man, or record stores, and it'd be full cardboard cutouts of us and stuff. They did do good promo, I'll say that, but we didn't get a tour, which we were kind of hoping. We planned for a tour and we practiced for a tour. It just never happened.
Did you save any memorabilia from the past?
Well, we've got all the articles. Like, we've got all the paper articles and all the chart listings. We've got all that, but that's it. No video, really. No video. I don't know why we didn't record video, but we have nothing.
Well, you sort of kind of get a new start with this new album, Flying Through the Moon, and I'm assuming, I know there's a couple songs that are re-recorded that you released in the past. Is most of this material newer material, or stuff that you've been sitting on for 30 years?
Most of it is newer stuff. I'm about to pull the record. Most of them are newer stuff. Yeah. The title song is written within the last couple of months, actually. The first single, that's a new song. I think the only ones on there, like Waiting on a Train, that we did in our old album. I redid it because we never was happy with it. And So Far Away, of course. And after that, the rest was new. We had to weed that down from about 70 songs. So we have a bunch of others that we're planning to release and record. We kind of like finish them up to 90% and then move on and come back and move on. So probably within the next couple of months, we'll have another one done.
Was it just you and RHYS putting this album together, or did other members from the 1989 version of the band contribute?
Oh yeah, everybody contributed in some way. Guitar player played some. We even brought back the original guitar player. We shot some music videos for them, and the original drummer, and RHYS, of course. RHYS has been here the whole time, and then Stuart, one of the other singers, he's popped in and out, and then the new singer, and then we added my son and my daughter to it. We're both musicians, and so they played on it. So
that's your daughter that does the female vocals on the album?
Yeah, and my son plays guitar and Flying Through the Moon.
Are they also in bands of their own?
No, they're not, actually. They just won't do that. They got more talent than I had when I was their age, but they're just, well, except my son, he's kind of into guitar now. He just learned it during COVID. That's when he learned to play. And it just took off, and he's got a talent for it.
So Mystery Romance broke up shortly after your first album was released. What happened to everyone after that? Did some stay in the music field? I mean, you mentioned you're in movies. RHYS, I didn't catch where you were at, but what kind of happened to everyone? Did you try to keep it together, and then you went your separate ways? What happened?
Well, let RHYS talk about what he did. So.
After we kind of fizzled out there a little bit, I went into music retail and stuff, and then for the last 20 years, been doing church music, actually, music director.
Yep, Reese has been doing that. I kept it together with recording. The guitar player moved away to Vancouver, and we would back and forth cassette tapes. And the other singer still lives in town. We're still good friends, and I just kept trying to keep it going from time to time. But then, family and stuff gets in the way, and you get distracted for 4 or 5 years. And we've kept pretty much everyone involved as much as we can because we're still friends. So
do you plan on taking the band back out to do a couple live shows, or are you just going to stick to staying in the recording studio?
I think right now we're going to stick to recording studio because everyone's spread around so much, it's hard to even get together, right?
We'd probably entertain an offer if somebody offered us to do something, but
we would, yeah.
I think to initiate it ourselves is probably a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, one guy lives in Portland, one lives in Vancouver. The rest of us, one's in Mexico right now. He travels around the country, and there's 3 of us in Calgary, so it's kind of hard.
You have the one video story of We out now. From what I understand, you worked on editing it and putting it together, correct?
Yeah, we shot that, and we did put So Far Away. Took the old footage that we had from the original, added a little bit of new footage. It's out. And we shot one for Waiting on the Train, and we're going to shoot
a couple of Christmas ones, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of Christmas ones out there. We did a Christmas one last year, and then we're going to shoot another one. We're going to plan to do a couple more. I've got 2 more to release, 2 off that album actually. One for See Me Through, and one for Tell Me, which we started recording that song for our second album for A&M. They wanted to release it, but wouldn't put the money up for an album, so we wouldn't let them. And so we sat on that one for a long time. So
it was funny, the timing of the dissolve of the band, as it were, and the dissolve of A&M Records, where it's about the same time. Because in the early 90s, Albert and Moss sold A&M to Universal, and Universal just kind of imploded, made A&M implode, and they dropped a ton of artists at that time, 30 years ago, and that kind of about the same time as we kind of packed it in, right?
Yeah, it did, yeah. I remember having a meeting with the head guy at A&M, and he said, "Oh, love your album. We're going to do another one," and then they dissolved. We did end up having Stuart and I, the singer, did end up doing one under the name Trinity Square that was out on Universal about 2007, 2008, and they put it into stores and stuff, but nothing really happened with that.
I think everything's internet today. It's not so much stores.
Yeah,
it's
internet. All. It's internet today, yeah. And I think it's, from what I'm reading, it's not so much albums anymore. It's single after single after single, right?
There's a little balance between that. Yeah, a lot of artists release singles, but all of a sudden there's this resurgence in vinyl, and even young kids are after vinyl. So there's sort of a physical market there, but I can already see that the record companies are they're gonna price themselves right out of the vinyl market, like they did with CDs.
It's hard to get it. We were going to print a vinyl of Flying Through the Moon, but I looked into it. It was like an 18-month wait, and it was
$1,500.
$1,500 for 100 copies, where you can get a CD for $50. It's like, wow, an 18-month wait. They've closed down all those plants.
Now musicians are actually buying their own vinyl plants. Like Metallica just bought one, and Jack White of the White Stripes, he has one too. So they're able to get them out faster. And then the bigger ones are prioritizing artists. Like Taylor Swift had no problem getting all those vinyls in less than 8 months.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. And Adele, I heard when Adele booked hers, everyone else was bumped for a year.
Yeah.
Right, stuff like that. Yeah. Well, Reese is big time into vinyl, right?
I love vinyl. I got a new turntable, and I love buying all the old stuff because the quality is better than it used to be back in the original days. But I still kind of gasp when I have to pay $45.
Yeah. Mind you, my son, who's 20, he buys vinyl, nothing but vinyl. He's probably got 150 albums, and he's always buying vinyl. So the kids do like it. Yeah. I like we had this conversation today. It's about music, and I think it's not so much that the music's bad today because of kids, or I think the kids aren't exposed to the great music, and if they were, they'd love it. I mean, my daughter the other day she's driving me around. She said, "I want you to listen to some new stuff," and she's playing me Steely Dan. Well, where are you finding this? and Ambrosia and stuff like that, and they love it.
Well, and my kid, that's 16, plays me new stuff all the time, every day. And I've never heard of any of it because none of it's on the radio. I'm like, some of this is crap and some of this is really good, but none of it's on the radio. So they don't care what's on the radio. At least my daughter doesn't. She finds stuff from TikTok and wherever else, right? And and movies like Stranger Things and stuff. So they get it from somewhere, but they ain't coming from radio.
No. Of course, if you say radio metal, like is there still, because that kind of disappeared, right?
It as a mainstream form, heavy metal is sort of considered underground again. Okay. But I mean, certainly in Europe, it's huge. Overseas, they absolutely love it. There's a huge audience over there. Overseas loves the nostalgia act. So you take the metal of the 80s, and those guys could still release albums over in Europe and it be successful. They got so many festivals in Europe for all these metal acts. So they hold on, just not so much in the US. The US sort of has it, but they put like a little corporateness on what metal we have here in the US.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Well, that's good. Some of that stuff was good too.
Well, I think with the advent,
can a lot of the hard rock acts survive, make a living just from doing live shows in the US, or do they have to be international?
I think they exclusively make their money off of live performances. I don't think they're making money off of their music anymore. If it is, it's very little. I'd say that T-shirts, merchandise, probably a little bit on vinyl now, and live performances is probably the main financial means for hard rock and metal acts today.
Or sync placement, because that actually does play well if you can get it, pay well if you can get in there.
Yeah, video games and movies and stuff like that, and
then that's where the kids find the music, right? And they're going like, "Well, what's that?" And then they go searching for it.
Yeah.
And it's funny, back, like in the 80s, bands would be like, "No way, my song's going in a commercial. I'm not selling out." And now you have to.
Yeah, that is funny.
That's the payoff.
That's right. That is funny. Yeah.
So you guys do everything yourself. You're still on Current Records. Is that your imprint?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
They do our when we release a single, they'll do the promo and follow up and radio track it and stuff like that. And the last single, not so far away, the one before, did pretty good. We had like 20 or 30 stations playing it, so that was good. And they follow that up. But that's basically where it's down to now. It's tough for record companies to survive, right? They used to book you didn't book us, but they used to book the bands they had previous before they went defunct, and tours and everything. And that's pretty much gone, right? Did you know who Current were?
No, I was unfamiliar with that. I mean, I've interviewed some Canadian acts, but that hasn't come up. Like Attic Records, I know, out of Canada.
Oh yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, Current was right up there, said, because they'd won 2 Junos, one with Parachute Club, with a couple of huge hits, and Gold Records, and M+M. You might probably heard that song, Echo Beach. That's one of their bands, and that's still pretty popular today. So they had quite a track record. Just we caught them at the tail end of when things were starting to change.
So you mentioned you guys are laying down some tracks. I assume you're working on your follow-up album?
Yes, yeah, we are. We're working on that. Trying to learn some new software from this East-West, what's it called? East-West music. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yes.
Yeah, Hollywood backup singers, and because you can get software to help you with backup singers, you can play it on your keyboard, but it's not like they advertise that we're finding. It's a lot tougher than to get it to work, so we're just trying to figure out things, what way we can add some textures to the song, and if not, we'll probably just do real people. We're just working on it bit by bit. That's the way it is now. Pretty much every Friday is devoted to it, and then sometimes during the week I'll work on stuff.
We're looking for singers.
Yeah, we're actually doing on this one. We're trying to add some guest singers, some guys, some people that we know, that to have them come in and sing some of the tracks, just something different.
Are you going to put out like a advertisement for that, or are you going to try to stick with your circle of musician friends? No,
we've done that, and it's really hard to find good singers. Like, it's really hard. We found one guy locally that we know who can sing blues rock, so we're going to have him do one. But we've had an ad up for a while now trying to find a singer, and RHYS has been out to a few gigs looking for some people, but hard to find. I don't know if it's that are not there. They're just afraid to put themselves out there today with all the negative stuff going on.
Yes, if you read comments on the internet, nobody's gonna like you.
No barrier, right?
Yeah, I know that, because when I taught high school too, and I was running a music kind of blog class called In the Green Room, where every Friday kids could come, play their song, and we'd put it up live. And not one out of 1,500 kids would actually let me put it on the internet. And they were good. And they're just afraid of the negative comments. In our day, if you didn't like you had to write into the paper, and they had to print it. So you didn't have to listen to that, right? So it is a different world for them.
Most people won't take the time to write a compliment because, hey, I'm happy with this. It's fine. I don't have to tell the world about it. But if I'm angry, I got to tell everyone.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Yeah. So no, we'd like to try to find some other singers to work with. It's good to work with different singers. We're kind of like, I don't know. Do you know who Alan Parsons is? Alan Parsons Project? Yeah. So that's what we're kind of going. We should be like Alan Parsons and just bring people in when we want them to do stuff. Because we like the recording process. We like the creating the songs from scratch and then getting it all recorded and finding the right singer for the right part.
Yeah, we've got a few tunes that are almost done, and we're like, okay, well, the singers we've been using, they're just not right for this song. So we need this kind of a voice or that kind of a voice.
Yeah, like we have a country one, and it's turned out to be great, but and our singer sang it, and he did a good job, but it's just not the right voice. So we've been trying to find a country singer, and we can't find one. And we're in Calgary, Western Canada. You'd think we'd find one here, and we haven't been able to find one yet. But I think we're gonna try out one of these. What was that company called?
Not Fiverr, but
no, we tried Fiverr. Couldn't find anybody on Fiverr. It's Studio Pros. Yeah, you can get some singers from there. So we're gonna try one just for that. Because for sync, I mean, we're not a country band, but for sync, you can place country in other places, right?
Where did the band's name come from?
Well, it actually came from a friend of mine when we were looking for names. It was it was around 84, 85, maybe 86 when the UK music was coming on. It was called New Romantic Music. And he came over one day and he's listening and he said, your music's kind of romantic, but there's a bit of a mystery to it. And so that's where it came from.
Perfect.
One of the other band members tried to claim that he came up with a beast. That wasn't true. That was the truth.
Well, I have to agree with that assessment of the music. Flying Through the Moon. I love the album. It gives me that 80s nostalgia. Like I said, soundtracky new wave that I grew up with. And the album is out now. It's streaming on all the major platforms. And I want to thank you, Mike and RHYS, for coming on the Rock is George podcast to talk about it today.
And thank you for having us, and we'll be sure to keep you in the loop when we do another one. My last question for you is, what's your favorite song on the album?
Oh, I like the single, So Far Away.
Yeah, that's actually that one doing okay. It's on Spotify. I think it's streamed the most.
You know what? I like the Train one too, and the other one that I liked, it had a silly name, Boom Boom Shaka Bomb Bomb. You know what? I thought I was going to hate that, but I actually liked it.
You know what? We have one of the guys in the band. He's like, I can't stand that, but his kids loved it. Right? Oh, that's funny. Well, that's good to hear. Well, thank you, George. We'll keep you in the loop. If you don't mind, we'll send you some more stuff when we're done.
All right. Best of luck with everything, guys. Once again, I want to thank Mike Scullion and RHYS Green of Mystery Romance for coming on the Rock is George podcast. Be sure to check out their latest album, Flying Through the Moon, out now on Current Records. Head over to your favorite music streaming app. Take a listen to what's available. If you like what you hear, when it's available, buy a physical copy. Support the artist. For all things Mystery Romance, head over to their official website, mysteryromanceband.com. I also want to thank Jerry Young of Current Records and Management for making this interview possible. You've been great. I've been George Dionne. Discover your next favorite artist on the Rock is George podcast.